the past 20 years, we have learned so much about active shooters and the lessons of Columbine, the lessons of Parkland, and now the lessons of Uvalde, which is you go in to the sound of gunfire. Police officers are supposed to run to the sound of gunfire and take down the shooter. No longer do you have the time or the luxury to stay outside and wait for reinforcements. That lesson has been learned in the blood of way too many dead children. And that is exactly what the head of the Texas Department of Public Safety said didn't happen today. Take a listen.
Texas embraces active shooter training, active shooter certification, and that doctrine requires officers, we don't care what agency you're from, you don't have to have a leader on the scene. Every officer lines up, stacks up, goes and finds where those rounds are being fired at and keeps shooting until the subject is dead, period.
And despite the millions of dollars in training spent for departments around the country, billions of dollars spent on school security, new fences, doors, locks, visitor registration systems, it didn't work here. And in fact, this school had so many of the things that we were told to pay for to stop school shootings. Robert Sherman has been looking into that and joins us now. Hi, Robert.
Hey there, Leland. So, as you said, you have school districts all around the country that have been investing in security measures to protect their students. This school district is no different, so we took a look at that. And you look at the whole school budget for the entire school district, it's about $40 million, $435,000 of that goes to security measures here at this school. They have 6 different resource officers at their disposal. Here's something interesting, though, Leland, in terms of infrastructure that they've invested in. You had over at the high school in 2019, they installed electromagnetic doors to try and protect their students as much as possible. Over at Morales Elementary School, they installed new doors there as well. But this is the thing, though, Leland, as we've talked about, is that you could build a school as impenetrable as Fort Knox with bulletproof windows and large doors that are 2 feet thick of solid steel. But if you leave a door propped open, all of a sudden, it's not so impenetrable anymore. So that begs the question, how many schools around the country are having these doors propped open? I mean, take a case study, for example. If you're in springtime in Ocala, Florida, or Pelham, Alabama, or Bloomington, Indiana, it's hot, it's boiling inside, everyone's uncomfortable. You make the decision to prop the door open. On the one hand, everyone feels a little more comfortable. On the other hand, you have a self-inflicted security breach.
Right, and all of the money, all of the training, all of the security measures put in basically become worthless because of that one thing. We learned that here with this door. In fact, I was talking on the radio earlier to a station in Chicago. They were talking about the fact that teachers in Chicago were calling in yesterday saying that they had propped open their windows and their doors because it was hot out. Campus police at U.S. schools, 19% of elementary schools, 45% of middle schools, 67% of high schools. Just in a minute, we're going to hear from the colonel of DPS about why this one school resource officer was not here. In the meantime, take me through. They had a chief of police here. Not only did they have a school police department that should be trained in every way on school shootings, otherwise what's the point of having a school police department? But still, they had trained the Uvalde City Police Department on these things. None of that seemed to work.
Right, and it is interesting is that the last known image that we've been able to find of the SWAT team, it's actually them talking about how they're going into some of these schools to learn the layouts, to learn the schematics of a lot of these schools. So if a situation like this were to happen, they would be more prepared. Well, here we were, and you talk with Texas DPS, they say that all of this happened so quickly, largely because that door was open, few paces in, few paces around the corner, and all this horrendous carnage took place. It was so quick.
You think about it, but for that door, he would have had to go all the way around the school and try to find a way in. A totally different situation. In fact, we learned that the school resource officer drove past the suspect after the initial 911 call. Here is that soundbite from the head of the Texas Department of Public Safety.
But the bottom line is that officer was not on scene, not on campus, but had heard the 911 call with a man with a gun, drove immediately to the area, sped to what he thought was the man with a gun, to the back of the school, what turned out to be a teacher, and not the suspect. In doing so, he drove right by the suspect, who was hunkered down behind a vehicle where he began shooting at the school.
All right, safety funding for nationwide, $1.6 billion for safety programs, $400 million to the Emergency Management Performance Grant. That's what is given to schools to try to harden things. Are we to effectively learn that 20 years later we're in the same spot we were?
Right. And, you talk about all those investments, but we also saw today how easy it is for a lot of those investments to go by the wayside simply because of human error, something that a lot of those numbers and those investments don't take into account.
Right. Human error, or people just not paying attention to the training, and now we're where we're at, which brings us back in the end to the person who did this, which is Salvatore Ramos. His grandfather went to this school. So in the end, evil is evil, and there's not a lot of ways to fix it. Robert, great reporting. Obviously, stay on this, and there's so many more facets to this in terms of where this money is going and who's getting the big consulting contracts to pay for all of these security measures that clearly did not do any good. All of this security training here that was done in Uvalde that came down to one man, at least as far as we know, one man right now, making what turned out for children to be a fatal decision. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.